Good morning to everyone. This is Dr. 𝗳𝗍𝗺. Now we are going to talk about the topic on the pedagogy of English language, which is the paper 1 for the Gurukulam PGT. So here the language is very essential instrument for the human beings. So now we are going to discuss the topic exactly the nature of language and its historical development. So the pedagogy is a broader discipline or the broader term that deals with the theory and practice of teaching. Pedagogy informs the teaching strategies, the teacher actions and teacher judgments and decisions by taking into consideration theory of learning, understanding of students and their needs and the background and interest of the individual students. Language. Language is a system of communication that reflects the social requirements of the society. Language is a communicative medium of expressing ideas and concepts as well as the feelings and attitudes. Language, coming to the definition for the language is useful to communicate, or without language we can't express our views, emotions and attitudes to the others. The famous linguist Chomsky defined that children are biologically programmed for language learning and that language develops in the child in the same way as other biological functions develops. For example, we have the digestive system. Here this process is biologically programmed, like the language is also biologically programmed for the learning. The nature of the language. So the language is a unique characteristic of human being and is created by man himself. It is a system of vocal sounds coupled with gestures, signs that are shared by a nation. It is basically for communicative purpose. It is used to transmit information to maintain relations. Without language we can't express our views with the others. Only the human being having that facility or that capacity to express their ideas in the form of language. Whereas we'll take the example of animals and birds. The animals are going to attract the same group with the sounds. Whereas coming to the birds, we'll take honeybees. Just it is trying to attract the same group with the buzzing sound or a dancing. So the language is not only the totality of the 4 basic skills. As we know, the 4 basic skills of L, S or W. Listening, speaking, reading and writing. So the language learning is not only focusing on the basic skills, but the inner competence is required for the performance of them. So the language skills acquired only by using and practicing continuously. Just learning the language is not only the 4 basic skills which we know, that L, S or W. So these are getting perfection only with the regular practice and usage. So the continuity is going to be helpful for the language skills acquisition. So as we know, so many students are completing their higher education, but only the problem with the language skills. So the language is not communicated in a proper way, so that was become a drawback to the students. So the language structure is designed in different subsystems. Like the language is structured and highly organized system. In English, language is rule governed and operates with the different subsystems, like the system of sounds. So whatever the word you are going to say, that you are going to give a sound. So this process is called phonology. And the system of word, this is known as a morphology. And the system of structured is known as a syntax. And the system of meaning, that is semantics. And the system of usage, pragmatics. Like this we have different subsystems in the structure of language, which is systematically organized in a higher order and rule governed and operate with the subsystems. So to understand the system of communication by analyzing different complex views of language as interpreted by linguists, the communicative view of language, the structural view of language and international view of language. So, the language acquisition or acquiring the language or learning the language, the major part is you must be in a position to communicate with others exactly what you want to say, and the listener or the other respondent should be pay attention towards your language. If the language or the communicative process is comfortable, for example, you are the speaker, then the listener will be there. So, the whatever the message you want to convey, that should be conveyed to the listener in a proper way, with the proper sound, stress, and with clarity of the voice. And the next one, structural view of language. So, to make our language convenient to understood by the listeners, definitely we have to follow some structures. For example, we are learning grammar, it is talking about different structures. So, based on that, we are going to pass the information or share the information. So, the language is not only for the individual, the other person or the listener should be in a position to understand exactly what you are saying. And coming to the third one, international view of language. So, here we have the system of the international language. English is the international language, so that we have lot of communications or the technology part which is having or which is giving more relationship with the other countries. The features of language. So, here we are following duality of structure of language is interpreted in two levels. The first level, we are compounding the words, we are compounding of sounds to words. For example, you want to say the sentence that many boys play cricket. So, to make them convenient, here we are following the first level. In the first level, the combination is sounds to words. Many boys play cricket. So, to make them convenient, M plus A plus N plus Y, many, B plus O plus Y plus S, P plus L plus A plus Y, C plus R plus I plus C plus K plus E plus T. This is the first level compounding of sounds to words. Coming to the second level, compounding of words into sentences. For example, whatever the words you have taken in the first level, you are going to compounding the words into sentences. Many boys play cricket. So, this is the way you are going to frame the sentence with the help of words. So, just we talk about the nature and now we are looking into the historical development. So, English language teaching and learning has become very complex in India, as Macaulay purpose in introducing English in India, but the attitude of Indians was unhelpful. But as a teacher, every teacher should understand that it is a global language, it is a lingua franca, which is nothing but the common language for both domestic and the international communication, and it confers confidence, power to invent and create. It is a symbol of better life in India. Actually, at the time of Britishers, we don't have proper facilities of getting education, especially Macaulay focused on introducing English in India, whatever the purpose may be. Actually, this was Britishers when they came for the East India purpose in the 16th century. Later, officially they came and ruled by the 18th century. They started medium of instruction should be in English, and English should be a part of subject in Indian education system. So, the development of language policy in India. In the year 1835, British in India declared English medium of education for schools and universities. It flourished, lower esteem, convenience and continued after independence. As per our Indian Constitution, Article 343, Hindi as official language and recommended the use of language for official purpose for 15 years period. Later, Hindi supposed to replace English. It occupies special place in the parliament, judiciary, education, media, journalism and all the areas. So, the Indian government improved the standards of English to support better teaching and learning process. At the same time, the government also designed some committees and commissions and also the recommendation towards the policy making in the language development. Based on that, they introduced the three-language formula. The main objective by implementing the three-language formula was national integration, international communication, and there was a first discussion on language in schools by CAB, Central Advisory Board of Education, in the year 1940 by proposing a few areas. The areas were number of languages taught in schools, introduction of second and third language, place and role of English, the place and role of Hindi, and teaching of Sanskrit and minor languages in schools. After a long debate by the CABE, Central Advisory Board of Education proposal, three-language formula officially introduced in the 1956. At the same time, the board also recommended the study of English as a compulsory language both at the secondary and the university stages, and also mentioned it should not be introduced earlier than class 5, and also they suggested English language should not be introduced earlier than class 5th. So they come with a few recommendations. The recommendations of the three-language formula were simplified and proposed and approved by Chief Ministers Conference in the year 1961. So the recommendations and approvals were the regional language or the mother tongue of the individual child, means whatever the language or the regional language, Telugu, Hindi, Marathi, or whatever it may be, that will be the regional language. The second one is Hindi in the non-speaking areas or any other Indian languages in Hindi-speaking areas. And the third one, English or any other modern European languages. So finally, after examining all these recommendations, the Education Commission 1964-66 advocated three-language formula. The Education Commission 64-66 is also known as Kothari Commission. The mother tongue or the regional language, that was the first. Coming to second one, the official language of the union or the associate official language of the union. Third one, a modern Indian or the foreign language. So the introduction of English is made at different levels of primary schools in different stages. Especially in Andhra Pradesh, it is from the class 3. The first language is mother tongue or the regional language, that should be started from the class 1. The second language, Hindi and the Sanskrit, from the class 6. And the third language, that is English, from class 3. So the next we are going to know the status and its importance of English in India. As we know, nowadays we have a great role or the crucial role of English in our day-to-day life. Without English language, you are not going to face or you are not going to deal the situations in a proper way. So especially in the professional courses, we need a lot of communicative skills. So the English was the first introduced in India by the 16th century, as we already know that when East India Company came to trade. So when Britishers established their rule in the 18th century, it became as a status, that underwent a change. So English establishment, its roots in the Indian society and on the education system. In the present scientific and technological world, the significance of English is increasing widely. The Secondary Education Commission 1964-66, known as Kothari Commission, has explained English as a library language or the link language and window of the world. So here the language, English language, is the library language. So whatever the books you want, for example, you will take the focus or area of the science and technology. Majority, not only the majority, 100% of the books are available only in the library in English medium only. So that it is making us to know the importance of English language in our day-to-day life. But the National Knowledge Commission in 2007, which believes that it was the time came for us to teach our people about the English language or the importance of language. So here nowadays the English become as a global language. When people of different backgrounds meet, they need to communicate using a common language. So the position of English in India is quite encouraging. In fact, it has become a lingua franca, which is the common language and used in many regions around the world. It is used as a means of communication in various contexts such as government, judiciary, education, media, and etc. The nature of language as a means of communication, here the language is going to helpful us to develop the skills. So language as a skill, and next language as a communication. So to communicate with others, definitely you need the language, whether the language may be either English or Telugu or Hindi or whatever it may be, but you need the language. So language is a system of systems. So this is a system of systems is a combination of the subsystems, as already we come to know that the syntax, the phonology and all those morphology. Language is a creative and language is arbitrary, language is a systematic one and language is extendable. It is a symbol of human culture. The language is prevarication, means which helps to imagine. So here we are coming to know as a first language. So as Chomsky pointed out, the language learning is nothing but the biological development. So children pick up their mother tongue from the speakers in the immediate environment in a natural way. Learning the first language is like one of the basic instinct. While listening and speaking, the first language or natural processes, reading and writing are taught earlier in a school or elsewhere. The teaching the first language means teaching how to read and write, teaching the standard language. As a second language, the status of any language can be determined by the perception of the language users regarding the value of what language and their desire for using it. If the mother tongue is the first language, then the second language is usually not a native language in a country, but is widely used as a medium of communication. Now we will come to know the factors responsible for making English as a second language. So these are the major factors, like it is a common language, it is as a national link language, you want to have the link with the other nations. So the language is very important one. So the English had taken that place to link the other nations, not only the nations, with countries. Language of the world. Medium of instruction at the higher education level and passport for the employment. So here you want to go for the higher education for other countries, definitely you have to depend on the English language. Library language and source language. Language of commerce, administration and mass media. English is a window on the world. English is a rich and beautiful language. It is a unifying factor and the language means of social and intellectual communications. Okay, now we all discussed all this. I want to make you the conclusion that so here the language, as we all know the importance of language. So the language is very, very essential instrument for the human beings. So without language we can't survive and we can't express our views and ideas. So here the language, whatever the language it may be, either the mother tongue or the regional language or national language or international language, anyway the information should be communicated with others in a proper way, what exactly the speaker want to say. So the language development I had taken is not an easy task. It is having a lot of history behind that. So now this is a methodology subject we are talking about. So the pedagogy is a broader concept which is deals with the theory and practice of teaching. So the teaching as well as the teachers. As a teacher they should perfect with the English language so that they are not going to face any problem with the communication in English language. So the pedagogy which is informing the teachers, whatever the strategies they are following in the classroom or whatever the teacher actions and whatever the judgments and what type of decisions they are taking into the consideration is by the theories of learning. And to introduce or to teach the methodology or the pedagogy of English language, here we are following so many methods and techniques. So, to make the English language understanding in a better way, we need to take the help of methods and approaches, so that the student is going to feel comfortable and what the exact student needs. And before that, we should know what is the background of the student and what is the interest of the individual students. So, the language is a major role in our day-to-day life, especially we are talking about the English language. So, the language is a communicative medium of whatever we are expressing, the ideas, concepts, feelings, emotions, and all will be possible only through the language. So, without language, for example, you take the example of animals or the birds, they are expressing only with the sounds. So, as per the structure of the language, we have to perfect with the sounds, word, structure, meaning and the usage. For example, you want to spell a word, you have to spell the word in a proper way with the proper sound, like where you require the stress, where you require the pause and the proper intonation. Then only the voice clarity will come and the listener will definitely understand your idea or concept. So, to understand the system of communication by analyzing into different complexities, here the language is for the communication point of view, as well as it is for the structural point of view, and it is for the international point of view. So, to make our language or the features of language to very comfortable, here we are following into different levels. So, at the initial stages, you are not going to give the structure to the students. First, you have to start with the words, then you are going to start or introduce or combining the words into sentences, so that it is an easy to learn the language. Already the student have the phobia of English language, especially. It is an international language. This is not our language. We are not in a position to speak. But these all the problems or the barriers will come out by the teaching methods. So, we look into the historical development. By the 18th century, when Macaulay introduced the system of education or the universities should be in English by the year 1835. So, as our constitution, if we are looking into the constitution, it is developed in a English language. So, by looking into all these areas, science and technology, everywhere, education system, journalism field or media or judiciary, whatever it may be, everything is possible, or each and every point is focused only in English, so that the acquiring more knowledge skills, especially the English language skills, are making the learners is more comfortable to face any challenge in their profession. Okay. So, here the language formula, as we know that there was a 3-language formula. So, in this 3-language formula, the first language is definitely the mother tongue or the regional language. So, for this the student does not require automatically at the home environment that language make them to learn. That is considered as the first language, and the official language, that is the second language and the third language. So, here we are going to introduce the first language from the class 1, and the second language we are introducing from class 6, and the third language from class 3rd. So, totally the English become as a global language. So, once you are perfect with the English language, definitely you can go anywhere and you are not going to face any problem in the global world. Okay. From this topic in the competitive exams, we can expect that they may give the definition of pedagogy. So, we have to give the definition of pedagogy. So, exactly the defining the term of pedagogy, that may be the major question. And what is language? That will be the one more question. The language, definitely easily we can define the term. So, here the famous linguist who focused on the language. So, as we discussed, you know, the Chomsky was the famous linguist focused on the language, and he considered it is not the other term, it is considered as only the biological term. So, the next they may give for the structure of languages. So, for example, what is the system of sounds. So, sometimes they may give for the morphology, this is talking about what, and sometimes they can go for the frame the structure of the language. There we have to draw all the subsystems, that is comfortable to draw. And how this language is for what purpose and what is the view of the language. So, we discussed already the communicative view of language, the structural view of language and the international view of the language. So, next who focused on introducing English in India. There you can give the answer that Macaulay. At the time we can say that Macaulay in the year 1835. So, what is the article? As per the Indian constitution, we mentioned one article which focused on the official language. So, there you can give the answer that article 343. So, in the same time this is an official for how many years? That is for the 15 years period. Okay. Next, later after the 15 years period, Hindi also supposed to replace English. It occupies a special place in the parliament as well as in other systems. So, exactly the 3-language formula was proposed, come into discussions by the CABE. They may ask for the what is CABE, Central Advisory Board of Education, the year 1940. After so many discussions, again officially it was introduced by the 1961, which was recommended by the or approved by the Chief Ministers Conference. The year is 1961. Okay. So, the other name for the Kothari Commission, the Education Commissions, the year is 1964 and 66. So, this commission focused on the first language or the mother tongue. This should be from which class? From the class 1. The second language is from the class 6. Here what are the languages? Hindi and the Sanskrit. Third language, that is English. This should be from the class 3rd. So, here there is a chance of one more question. The Andhra Pradesh introduced the English language from class 3. So, here the introduction of the language is varied from one state to other state. They have their own strategy and the developmental task towards the language development. So, then and one more point focused by the Secondary Education Commission 64-66, English as a dash, it is a library language or it is a link language and window of the world. So, here there is a question of who proposed English language as a window of world. So, here definitely you can say that Secondary Education Commission 1964-66. And next NKC, that is 2007. So, the National Knowledge Commission 2007. Here we used one more word, that is lingua franca. Lingua franca means it is nothing but the common language and is used in many regions around the world. It is a means of communication in various contexts such as the government sector, judiciary or the other areas. Okay. Now, we are going to conclude the topic of history and nature of language and its development. Thank you.